Welcome to the webinar IoT in Vehicle Charging. My name is Göran Näslund. I am Strategic Segment Manager, Energy and Smart Cities at Telenor Connexion. With me today I have Martin Karlsson, Chief Digital Officer, B Charging Solutions. Martin will soon introduce himself and the company. The webinar will run for 30 minutes. We will leave time for questions in the end, but we encourage you and invite you to post questions anytime and we will address them as we go along. The webinar will be done by having an introduction and then it will be an interactive session. Before starting, I would like to take the opportunity to give you an introduction to Telenor Connexion. We are one of the world leaders when it comes to IoT connectivity globally. We are currently serving 12 million devices across the globe. Our customers can enjoy our services in 200 markets with access to more than 500 mobile networks globally. We are part of Telenor Group, one of the biggest telecom groups in the world with close to 200 million customers. We are one of the IoT pioneers. Our journey started 20 years ago when we started working with industry leaders like Verisure, Scania and Volvo to help them connect devices globally in an industrialized way. And we are very proud to still be serving them today. They represent a typical connection customer, active on a global market where IoT is a fundamental part of their products and their services. So requirements on our services are therefore very high when it comes to things like global reach, availability of service, an industrialized way of implementation, and an IoT-focused support and operations. We help customers realize their IoT ambitions using our managed connectivity, managed IoT cloud services, complemented by professional services and service excellence tools. We are headquartered in Sweden, but we have an organization with IoT experts across the globe. You can find our customers in a number of verticals, and please go to our website and take part of some really interesting customer stories. Among the major verticals, you can find automotive and energy, and both of them are relevant for today's webinar because they are both investing in the EV ecosystem. We see that sales of EVs are taking off rapidly today, driven a lot by the climate agenda, supported by a number of incentives like tax credits, but also regulations around emissions, forcing the car industry to introduce EV and hybrid models. EV cars has been around for some time, but the first models were maybe not so sophisticated and attractive. And I think we can give Tesla a lot of credit for introducing really nice cars and having an innovative business model with direct sales and a rich network of charging stations. So now we look at EV cars differently today. And we see that most car makers, from mainstream cars to luxury cars and sport cars, are introducing EV and hybrid models to the market. We also see car makers, energy companies and others investing into the ecosystem and also pushing governments and authorities to pave the way for this. We see governments setting ambitious targets. For example, European Union has set a target of 1 public charging station for 10 electric cars by 2025, meaning roughly 1 million public charging stations. And that should be 5 times more 2030. We know that home chargers are a much bigger number than that. So it's an interesting market to be in. Now we just have to make sure that there is an EV charging infrastructure in place to support the growing sales of EV cars, and also a synchronized ecosystem to give users the same or better user experience than having a combustion car. B Charging Solutions has been in the business for many years, and they are here today to update us on the current situation and what it takes to implement and operate an EV charging infrastructure. They will also talk about how IoT is playing a key role in that. So with that, I leave over to Martin.
Thank you very much, Göran, for the introduction. And could I please ask you to go to the next slide? So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start telling you a little bit about the charging solution, and also a little bit how we see the market develop and how we've seen it develop over the last couple of years, and also a little bit how we see the future evolving and how it will look in the short term, and also a little bit on the long term. Diving into B is the leading EV charging operator in Sweden. We help to drive the transformation to e-mobility by developing dynamic and premium charging solutions for our customers, be that at home, in the workplace, or at the driving around in our public network. One of the reasons we've managed to grow and develop a good business model over the last couple of years is that we have a strong relationship with the car manufacturers. So we've been working a long term with for example, Volkswagen Group, but more recently we've also been working with the Polestar and helping them delivering good solutions and a stable solution to their customers when they buy an EV car. If we take a look at our customers, we have approximately 80,000 subscription users to our public network, and we have roughly 2,000 charging stations ranging from Ystad in the south of Sweden to Kiruna, very high up north in Sweden. Our head office is in Helsingborg, and we employ about 30 people, and we also have an office up in Stockholm. Could I please ask you to go to the next slide, Jaguar? If we look at the market, and we can look at it both from a Sweden point of view, but I think also we can look at it from a global point of view. The transformation to EV has taken a little bit longer than we expected. And as Göran was saying in his intro, Tesla has played a major role changing the market and driving the change towards EV mobility. However, the first takers on the EV cars have been people who have been very conscious about the environment, or very much into the technology of EV cars and what that brings. But what's been missing is the kind of car that's fit for the masses. And people talk about there's a tipping point. And the tipping point is when you have a car that can go more than 300 kilometers and it's priced at the medium range, that's when you will see the major change in doing the transformation to EVs. We did see that. If you take 2020 as an example, that was when we actually saw this big change happening. And if we zoom in on Sweden, actually, in December, more than 50% of all newly registered cars in Sweden were actually EVs. And that's the first time that has happened in Sweden. And that is one of the main drivers behind that is actually mainly that the cars manufacturers have made more cars available, but in particular Volkswagen and their ID.3s, which is the first kind of medium priced car, which is long range. And when we look at this, when we see this rapid increase of EV cars, we also notice, and we see it from our customers, that there's a much higher expectation on the services that are being provided. In the past, we and a lot of our competitors and companions in the industry have had a hard time and struggle a little bit to get the quality right on our service out, both at home but also on the public in the public charging network. Today, the quality and the availability of public charging places in Sweden, for example, is very good. We have a good network in Sweden, and there's plenty of places where you can actually charge your car. And the availability and the quality of service is good, both from us and also our competitors. So it's the growing need in the future for our customers to have an even more charging stations and also have a very reliable and relevant network is very important. And you can move to the next slide, and I'm just going to show you how from our point of view, how the market has developed if we look at numbers. I do like numbers. So if we look at for us in BJ charging solutions, compared in 2018, we delivered around 4 million kilowatt hours to our customers in our network. But if we look at how that has developed over the last 3 years, 2020, we've increased that to 60 million kilowatt hours. And if we turn that and calculate that into what does that mean in mileage, it actually means that people have been able to drive 105 million and more than 105 million kilometers on the energy we have provided them. And that in turn has resulted in whether we saved about 15,000 tons of carbon dioxide going out into the atmosphere. And this is all also driven, as I mentioned before, about the availability of vehicles. If we look in Sweden on the registered cars, we can see in 2018 there was about 68,000 registered chargeable cars. In 2020, that has dramatically increased to almost 190,000 cars. And this is what is driving the change, and also the demand for having solid, stable, and reliable solutions for charging, both at home, but also at driving out in the public, but also finally also in the workplace. And that were all the slides I had. So I'll hand it over to you again.
Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. And I want to remind the audience to please post questions in the questions field. We have a few questions coming in, and one question is, who is typically your customer?
Our typical customer is, of course, the EV driver, and but the EV driver can be a couple of things. It can either be a driver who drives around and charging our public network. As I mentioned in my intro, we have about 80,000 subscription users using our public network. But also the typical driver is, typical customer is the people who buy an EV car and need a solution to be able to charge the car at home. I think most of the studies that we have in Sweden, actually across Europe, shows that about roughly 90% of the charging actually takes place at home. And you tend to charge the car overnight and come out in the morning and have a fully charged car for your day to come.
Okay. But as EV cars becoming sort of maybe the only car that the household will have, I guess the range anxiety then and the need for public charging stations will grow, or how do you see that?
Absolutely. And I think the industry as a whole is constantly finding ways and finding resources to be able to expand our public charging network. And we see that in Sweden, and we see that in Norway, we see it in Denmark, if we look at the countries very close to Sweden. And absolutely, the need for a big public relevant public charging network is a must for this transformation to happen even faster.
Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of questions coming in. I think one question is, what's the main concern now for this taking off? I mean, if we start selling cars at the speed we're having and even higher speed now coming the next years, how do we make sure that there is an infrastructure in place? I mean, what needs to happen?
I think first of all, you need some legislative initiatives to be able to help to drive the investment it takes to invest in a public charging network, and we do see that happening across Europe. And I think the industry will find ways of developing charging stations when we see there's a growing demand for public charging. And I also think from a consumer point of view, there's and we see this happening already, that people are overcoming the anxieties they have of owning an electrical car. Will there be, where can I go? How long will it take to charge? Is it safe? How much does it cost? There's a lot of questions around the process of actually having and driving an electrical car. And we work a lot at B when we have something actually called Plan B to be able to answer these questions and help consumers and people who are thinking about buying an electrical car to overcome this kind of anxieties and also answer the questions they might have on what does it mean for me and how does it work and what are the myths and what are the facts.
Yeah, one, I don't know if it's a myth, but it's at least something has been in the papers, and one of the attendees has asked this question. What about the electrical grid? I mean, do we have enough capacity to charge all these cars?
It's a very good question, and actually a question that pops up quite often. The short answer is that we actually have enough electricity, because in Sweden most days we have overcapacity of electricity. The big challenge we have in Sweden, and I actually know only Sweden, I don't know what the situation is in other countries, but in Sweden our biggest challenge is getting the power to where people need it. So it's actually the network of transporting the electricity. And if you live in Sweden, you know we sometimes have a bit of a shortage in the south because we're quite far away from the where the electricity is being produced. And so that's the challenge. The challenge is not electricity per se, it's getting the electricity where people actually need it. And there's some studies being done that saying for Sweden, 1 million electrical cars will be equivalent of the 2% of our electrical need. So it's not a big, it's a big, of course, 2%, but it's not a major impact on the electrical demand in Sweden. It's more about getting it to where people need it.
All right. Okay. There are a lot of questions. One here is, I mean, the ecosystem is quite complicated. There's a lot of stakeholders, you know, from the grid to payments, authorizing, and so on. What type of use cases do you have? I mean, the need for information flowing back and forth is quite big, I guess. So what type of use cases do you have?
I think the need for information is always key, and the ecosystem is that if we look at our customers, we need to know where they are and where they're transporting themselves. And when they come to a public charging point that we operate, we need to ensure that we have good communication with that charging point, so they can authorize the charge, and we can record the transaction, and we can attach that to the customer. And if they pay monthly, we make sure that we have we can charge them correctly on a monthly basis. I'm not entirely sure I answered the whole question, but hopefully
I think we can. Yeah, we can go to. I guess it's more like what type of services that are sort of. We're going into the IoT part of this, and the question here is, one question for the audience is, what kind of role do IoT play in this, and maybe it's related to that, if you can like.
Yeah, absolutely. To make this work, to be able to provide a good service to our customers, connectivity is key. And we have roughly 9,000 devices spread out all across Sweden now, at people's homes, at workplaces, and as we talked about, the public charging points. We need to know, we need to have these connected to be able to provide a good service for our customers. We also need to have them connected to be able to provide support and services on the actual hardware. We need to know the hardware is up and running. We need to know when they might go offline, and when we need to do corrective measures to make sure that they run as they should. So connectivity in IoT and to be able to collect all this data into our backend is key for us to delivering our services.
Okay, so do you see, how do you see the future? I assume there are sort of more services coming in the future. You talk about sort of balancing in the grid, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many good ideas and thoughts about what the future will bring. We can already see now a lot of providers providing some very clever solutions to customers. For example, the ability to be able to charge your car when you're at home when the electrical price goes down to a certain level. You configure it, you tell the charge box to make sure my car is fully loaded, fully charged in the morning, but I only want to charge when the electricity price is as low as it can be. And these services are already out in the marketplace. Needs to come out to the masses, but they're already there. Some other pretty cool stuff that you can that people are kind of toying with and or thinking about is that you're actually driving around with quite a, if you have a fully electrical car, you drive around with quite a large battery and a lot of capacity. Maybe you charge your car overnight when the electricity is quite cheap and you drive out during the day to a shopping center, you plug it in, but instead of charging, you're actually transferring the power back into the grid, and you get money from that. So that's a lot of things you can do when you have actually connected car connected to your home and to the grid, on how you can use the power to maybe take off tops from when we actually need power, and pretty cool stuff like that you can do. So I think there will be many cool services and functions coming up in the future.
Okay, so it sounds like IoT connectivity is playing a really key role here. So that means that your technology must also be ready for the future. So one question here, what kind of technology are you using now, and what do you see going forward?
Yeah, as you mentioned in the intro, B has been around for a while. We've been building and delivering charging solutions in 2015. That means, which means we've been shipping hardware and functions and connectivities in 2015. So we have a wide range of technology in our hardware, ranging from 2G modems to today 4G and LTE, and that is also a challenge how to maintain and support that kind of ranging when it comes to infrastructure. So we have a lot of hardware, but everything we're shipping out today, we try to, of course, use the modern technology with when it comes to communication, and also we build our network and backend on the high-end modern technologies to ensure that we are as future-proof as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You told me that some of your chargers are using customers' own sort of communication infrastructure, like Wi-Fi. Sounds like a cost-effective way of piggyback on customers, but there are some drawbacks on that.
Yes, we early on in the early days, we did try that because it seemed like a very simple way of getting connectivity to our charge boxes. However, what we did find out, and why one of the decision was taken back and not to do that, was that we often lost connectivity to our charging infrastructure, because our chargers landed behind customers' firewalls, or they implemented some new rules in their networking, and which didn't allow us to get access to our charge points. And as I mentioned before, that is key for us to delivering a service to our customers. We needed to be able to reboot or upgrade firmware on our charge points, or we need connectivity to our charge points all the time. And going through a Wi-Fi just didn't work. There was so many times we just lost the connection, and a reliable connectivity is key, because going out, as I mentioned also before, that we have charge points from Ystad to Kiruna. That's a huge geographical span. Mm. Visiting a charge point for one of our public stations is a costly affair. So we want to be able to handle as much as we can remotely from our head office, where we can do quite a lot of maintenance and upgrades to our infrastructure without have to go out there being there physically.
Okay, I understand. So I guess the audience maybe want to understand what was your criteria and how did you select your IoT partner or supplier?
We did a review of the market about a year ago, and what we looked for was somebody who actually a professional partner who actually takes IoT seriously and actually makes an effort of making an IoT solution work, and also that has invest in their own infrastructure to ensure that the IoT solutions and its connectivity is an integrated part of their offering. So when you come to want to talk about, or you want to brainstorm about connectivity, you actually have a partner who can challenge you, but also help you deliver the perfect solution for your IoT needs.
Okay, I understand. You are today focusing on the Swedish market, but you have probably looked at maybe expanding. What would be sort of your requirements when it comes to entering other markets from a supplier point of view then? Did we lose Martin there? Okay, I think we lost Martin, but as we were having questions around what kind of role IoT is playing here, I think clearly Martin has addressed that, but since this ecosystem is quite rich and complicated, being able to connect and being able to send the information is key, as these services must simply just work every time. When we go to a gas station, we know that there is gas at the gas station. If it's closed, you can go to the next one instead. When it comes to a charging station, it simply has to work. So IoT is playing a key role here when it comes to connecting and providing services for the users as well for the operator of the charging station, being able to make sure that the infrastructure is online and working.
I'm back, if you can hear me.
Okay, yeah, you are back now. So I think we are getting close to the end of the session, but maybe before we leave, some sort of major lessons learned or key takeaways you would like to leave with the audience.
Absolutely. If I focus it in on IoT, we've had our share challenges over the years to ensure that we have connectivity with our devices. And as I mentioned before, not having connectivity and do a physical visit is a costly affair. So one of the reasons, one of the lessons we have is, as we just talked about before I was thrown out and back in, is that is to work with a partner who is good with and has a reliable network when it comes to communication and also knowledge about IoT. Another lesson is from a purely hardware and software point of view at the charge point is to actually have quite a lot of intelligence on in the boxes. So if a box loses connectivity, it knows by itself how to reconnect and find a different cell or whatever it needs to do to get back online, just to ensure that we don't lose connectivity for a longer period. So it comes back online, people can use the charge point and its services, and also we can make sure that we can keep our infrastructure up and running and having as many charge points available in public.
Okay, thank you. That was right on time. So I would like to thank everybody for attending this webinar today, and I also want to thank Martin for being with us today and sharing all your expertise and all your knowledge within this area. Thank you and have a good day.